What's up with Aaron's sons? We'll find out today on Daily Prayer. Hello and welcome to Daily Prayer today. Glad that you are with me. We're working our way through the book of, or the scroll of Numbers, continuing in Numbers chapter 3. So let's go ahead and get started first with the Beatitude. Blessed are the humble, for they are close to the sacred earth. Join me in a prayer for awareness. It is in the depths of life that we find you, at the heart of this moment, at the center of our soul, deep in the earth and its eternal stirrings. You are the ground of all being, the wellspring of time, womb of the earth, the seed force of stars. And so, at the opening of this day, we wait, not for blessings from afar, but for you, the very soil of our soul, the early freshness of morning, the first breath of day. I invite you to be still and aware in a centering breath prayer. Our reading for today is Numbers chapter 3, verses 1 to 4. Listen for God's word to speak to you. This is the lineage of Aaron and Moses at the time when the Lord spoke with Moses on Mount Sinai. These are the names of the sons of Aaron: Nadab, the firstborn, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. These are the names of the sons of Aaron, the anointed priests, whom God ordained to serve as priests. Nadab and Abihu died before the Lord when they offered unholy fire before the Lord in the wilderness of Sinai, and they had no children. Eleazar and Ithamar served as priests in the lifetime of their father, Aaron. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, so much shorter reading than we've had for the last couple of days, but we are in this sort of book called Numbers, or the Wilderness, and we've been hearing about sort of this numbering of the 12 tribes and the Levites. 12 because the two sons of Joseph are counted as their own tribes. And so we had sort of a numbering of those. We have now heard about sort of where they're all camping, and we're beginning to hear about the Levites in particular. So we start with a reminder of Aaron, the OG Levite, right? So Aaron and Moses are brothers. Moses is sort of the spiritual leader, and Aaron is the priest. Yes, those are two different sort of roles. So Aaron is the first high priest and has been ordained as such, and he had 4 sons. And we are reminded of something very pivotal, that there were 2 of those sons, Nadab and Abihu. And we are reminded that in the book of Leviticus, there's this story where they go in and they offer unholy fire before the Lord. We don't know exactly what that means, whether they brought the wrong kind of incense or whether they came in and they were drunk. It may be that they just kind of came in unannounced into the Holy of Holies. But whatever they did, they didn't do it in the proper way, which sort of highlights this idea in the scroll of Leviticus about holiness and unholiness, about how you need to be perfect. And part of that is the fact that they've now built this beautiful tabernacle and there are now 2 dead bodies in it. So what do you do to cleanse it? So we have this story as sort of a reminder of the stakes for what's going on here. Now, I mentioned yesterday sort of the idea of the holiness of God being overwhelming, not because God is unloving, but sort of the idea that God is so powerful that anything that is too weak to be in God's presence cannot be in God's presence. And so these two sons of Aaron were not. They did something that was not appropriate, whatever that was. And I think it's brought up here again to sort of remind us of what the stakes are. There's going to be conversation now about the Levites and what is the expectation for them. The book of Leviticus is all about that, right? What are the expectations for these people who are serving as priests, as mediators between the people and God? And there is this sort of idea, this expectation that the stakes for them, not to go back to that same phrase, are higher. There are higher expectations for those who are in sort of spiritual leadership, who are called to be this mediator role between God and humanity, which calls us to sort of recognize and remember all of the stories that we know of folks who have been in those positions of leadership and have not used them well. We think of systems, especially high control systems, in which rampant abuse and neglect and spiritual abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, all sorts of things go on. And where those leaders, quote unquote, are not held accountable. And how devastating it is for people, especially people that they have abused, but also how devastating it is, maybe not for that particular community. Unfortunately, it's not particularly devastating for that community. Oftentimes, those people in power are given just a forgiveness. They can sort of admit their wrongs or whatever it is, and then everybody just sort of pretends like it never happens. And that's if these things come to light. It's just sort of waved over. It's not actually dealt with. Systemic issues within these communities of faith. But that has a major effect on the church overall. There are many people who don't want to have anything to do with church, either because they have directly been hurt by the church or because they have heard these stories and they see the hypocrisy as these same leaders are those who call for higher expectations and demands on people who are not in positions of power. Of course, we also see these same dynamics in politics, but let's keep our focus in sort of the similar sort of place that these verses are about. Jesus holds religious leaders to a high standard. Jesus says, when talking about the children, let the little children come to me. Don't exclude them. Don't stop them. Don't bar them. And says that it is worse for someone who leads astray one of these little ones it would be better for them to have a millstone tied around their neck and them thrown to the bottom of the sea. He has a lot of critique for the religious leaders who he says in Matthew's gospel, scour the earth for converts and then make them twice as fit for hell as they are themselves. Being in a position of authority and power is challenging sometimes. And the responsibility is a lot. Because our call is to care for and nurture people and their faith. It is a place where there's potential for manipulation, for abuse. And so we need to hold ourselves and our leaders to a high standard. One of the watchwords from the Reformation of where the true church is where the sacraments are rightly administered, where the word is rightly proclaimed and heard, and where church discipline is appropriately done. That's not the words, but anyways, it's something like that. We have in our Presbyterian polity a whole book of our book of order, which sort of gives us our rules about what do you do in situations where those who have been called to leadership do not live up to the roles and the goals to which they have been called. What happens if there is abuse? What happens if there's manipulation? What happens if we just don't follow the rules? How do you deal with that? And I think to a growing extent, we are taking that seriously. And I think this was maybe the last General Assembly. It might have been the one before where I served. But there was a committee on sort of sexual abuse and ethics or something like that. And part of what they did was heard the findings from a task force that was selected by a previous General Assembly to really honestly listen to people who have been abused in all sorts of different ways by the church, by leaders in the church, by pastors, by elders. Folks from our denomination and folks from others. To take seriously those victims and ways that we can at least mitigate. We may not be able to stop, but at least mitigate. To slow down, to stop that activity. To create a situation and a system in which that is that much less likely. Unfortunately, not all bodies have that same mentality and expectation. Our siblings in the Southern Baptist Convention have received reports. They also did a report. They also did an investigation on abuse within their ranks and have not really decided to do anything with it other than obfuscate and pretend it didn't exist. The stakes are high for leadership. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have this story of Nadab and Abihu and why we are reminded of it in this scroll. As we're talking about leaders, as we're talking about those who are called to represent God to the people and the people to God, so much harm can be done if we don't do that right. I invite you to take some time to consider, to pray, to meditate, to journal. If this has brought up some trauma, some abuse, some experiences of yours, I invite you to sit with them. If you haven't already done so, seek out professional assistance in working through these things. When you're ready, we'll join our hearts together in prayer. For everything that emerges from the earth, thanks be to you, O God. Holy root of being, sacred sap that rises, full-bodied fragrance of earth's unfolding form, may we know that we are of you. May we know that we are of you. May we know that we are one with you. Together, one. Guide us as nations to what is deepest. Open us as peoples to what is first. Lead us as a world to what is dearest, that we may know the holiness of wholeness, that we may learn the strength of humility, that together we may live close to the earth and grow in grounded glory. I invite you into a time for silent prayers for peace. May the deep blessings of the earth be with us. May the fathomless soundings of the seas surge in our soul. May the boundless stretches of the universe echo in our depths. To open us to wonder, to strengthen us for love, to humble us with gratitude, that we may find ourselves in one another, that we may lose ourselves in gladness, that we may give ourselves to peace. Thank you so much for joining me today for daily prayer. Join us tomorrow for worship. And then on Monday for more daily prayer. Go to our website, standrewspc.com, for more information. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. If you happen to be watching on the day this comes out, it is Baby Day, Beer Pong Day, Bladder Cancer Awareness Day, Brothers and Sisters Day, Childhood Stroke Awareness Day, Free Comic Book Day, Herb Day, International Drone Day, International Scurvy Awareness Day, Join Hands Day, Kentucky Derby, National Auctioneers Day, National Fire Day, National Homebrew Day, National Life Insurance Day, National Play Your Ukulele Day, National Scrapbooking Day, National Start Seeing Monarchs Day, National Truffle Day, Pilates Day, Take a Baby to Lunch Day, Wildfire Community Preparedness Day, World Labyrinth Day, and World Tuna Day. Our liturgy today came from Praying with the Earth, a prayer book for peace by John Philip Newell. Our reading came from the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition. You can watch on YouTube, listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, sign up for a daily email on Substack. Thanks for joining me. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time.